Hello. Thank you so much for coming to Be More Beautiful's workshop about urban gardening on a budget. Just so everyone knows, this meeting is being recorded and will be posted on our YouTube channel and sent out to all registered participants. Before we begin tonight's workshop, I wanted to tell you a bit about Be More Beautiful. So Be More Beautiful is a city-led peer-to-peer beautification program. Our goal is to not only change behaviors and attitudes towards the beautification of our city, but to also encourage residents, businesses, and organizations to become directly involved in activities and projects that keep their neighborhoods clean. To meet this goal, we work closely with neighborhoods on their unique beautification projects and cleanliness challenges, as well as provide educational literature, outreach materials, and other resources that residents can use to keep Baltimore beautiful. I will send out a resource list after this workshop with a link to our website where you can read more about our mission and view various grant opportunities we offer to urban green spaces in Baltimore City. So tonight, we'll be talking about urban gardening on a budget. I'll offer some ideas, tips, and tricks to creating a garden in a small urban space with low-cost materials. If you have any questions while I'm presenting, please save them for the end or put them in the chat. I'll be talking for around an hour. We'll then have a chance for a question and answer session at the end. While I'm presenting, please mute your microphones. I'll be covering a lot of topics in this presentation, so please note that more detailed information and resources about all the subjects I covered today will be sent out in a follow-up email after this presentation. So we'll start off by talking about why you would want to grow a garden in the city. As you all know, food is becoming more and more expensive. In many neighborhoods in Baltimore City, we have what is known as a food apartheid. Food apartheid is a term that describes how racism and political power affects our food systems. Structurally racist and oppressive systems create inequitable food environments, resulting in neighborhoods without access to fresh produce or other healthy food options. As we work together to create a more equitable and livable society, growing our own food can be a tangible and fulfilling means by which to feed ourselves and our families while helping to create a localized food system on a micro scale. Since the COVID pandemic revealed some of the shortcomings of our industrialized food system, many people have taken up growing their own food as a way to ensure food security outside of relying on the unsustainable and unpredictable globalized mechanisms of food production and distribution. Many people feel that they need to invest large sums of money to create a garden, but there are many affordable and sustainable ways to grow food. Urban gardening can help to make healthy food accessible to everyone, while also helping to dismantle oppressive food systems and contribute to the overall beauty and health of our urban ecosystems. So our first topic this evening will be about the logistics of having access to space and soil. If you're living in an apartment with a porch or a row home with a small yard, you may be wondering how you can utilize every inch of land to grow food. Container gardening is one great solution to maximizing production space. Containers should be chosen depending on the plants that you are hoping to grow. Some rules of thumb are that you should choose a container that has good drainage and is food safe. Avoid containers made of pressure-treated wood or containers that previously stored chemicals. Whatever type of container you use, be sure that there are holes in the bottom for drainage so plant roots do not stand in water. In addition to having holes in the bottom of your container, consider adding sand or pebbles to the bottom for drainage. Most plants need containers at least 6 to 8 inches deep for adequate root growth. Start your container garden off with good soil and compost. Soil choice for container gardens makes a big difference. Commercial soilless mixes are an excellent choice for container gardens. They are lightweight, drain well, hold water and nutrients, and are generally free of weeds, insects, and diseases. They have a pH of about 6.2 and are typically comprised of ingredients such as perlite, vermiculite, composted bark, compost, and coconut coir. Try to avoid soilless mixes containing peat moss, as peat moss is very destructive for the environment to collect. It's also highly recommended to include some compost in the growing media for your container garden. Some examples of good soil mixtures for container vegetable gardens are 100% compost, 100% soilless mix, or 50% soilless mix combined with 50% compost. Topsoil should only be added to very large container gardens and should not exceed 5 to 10% of the total volume. We'll talk about affordable sources of soil later in this presentation. So one great low-cost or free option for container gardens are 5-gallon buckets. These can be obtained for free from local delis, bakeries, or breweries. Usually they cost less than $8 each from stores such as Ace Hardware or Lowe's or Home Depot. Buckets make great container gardens because they are tall enough that they can sustain the root systems of most vegetable and herb varieties. All you need to do to retrofit a 5-gallon bucket into a container garden is drill some holes in the bottom for drainage. After that, you can fill up to 1 inch below the bucket's brim with soil and start planting, usually with 1 plant per bucket. If your bucket gardens are placed on a hard surface, consider placing feet or support structures below so water can drain more freely. The color of the buckets you use will make a difference. Black or dark colored buckets will absorb and retain heat, while light colored ones will reflect light and stay cooler. Lighter colored buckets are therefore better for summer growing, while darker colored buckets might be better for early spring, fall, or winter growing. Some of the best vegetables to grow in buckets are tomatoes, eggplants, peppers, zucchinis, and cucumbers. So here are just a few examples of how you can garden using 5-gallon buckets. They can also be stacked vertically to increase your growing area. You can mount your bucket on a fence or cut a hole in the bottom of it and plant it as a hanging tomato plant. You can also upcycle a pallet to create a tiered stand for your gardening buckets to sit above the ground for extra drainage and space-saving capacity. The pictures on the top of the slide are ways you can convert a 5-gallon bucket into a growing space by creating drainage, constructing a self-watering bucket, vegetable garden, or creating an indoor hydroponic garden. Step-by-step guides on how to create these types of bucket gardens will be sent out and can also be found on Google if you're listening on YouTube. Another great option for free gardening containers are local nurseries, landscaping, or tree planting companies. These businesses usually have a large amount of plastic containers left over from their work, which often flow directly into the waste stream. These containers will vary in size and can be great for a variety of different plants, from small herbs to large vegetable plants. Another place to source leftover planting containers such as these are on Craigslist, FreeCycle, or Nextdoor. If you want to learn more about reusing single-use waste products into urban gardening containers and other agricultural accessories, check out our Upcycling for Urban Gardens workshop posted on our YouTube channel. So grow bags are also an affordable and accessible option for urban gardening. These can often be bought in bulk in packs of 10 or 20 for under $20. Trees, flowers, and vegetables alike can be grown in fabric bags. They are versatile, inexpensive, and hold up to years of use. Most importantly, plants of all kinds can thrive in them. Most plants will grow well in grow bags as long as you consider the root space that your plants will need. Grow bags are better than hard-sided planted containers or pots for many applications. In pots, the roots of the plants tend to grow in circles, entangling themselves, often becoming root-bound. This overcrowding increases the likelihood of having aeration and water stagnation issues, especially in larger pots that lack proper drainage. When the roots reach the edge of a plastic pot, they continue growing in search of more water and nutrients. This begins the process of structural damage to your plants. The roots become constricted, leading to less water and nutrient intake. Grow bags help alleviate this issue because as the roots come into contact with the edges of the fabric pots, they sense the drier soil exposed to the air. At this point, they know they have reached their growth limits. The roots become air-prone, which prevent overgrowth, eliminating girdling roots. Grow bags are porous. They require more frequent watering than plants grown in plastic pots. However, it is harder to overwater them using a grow bag, as any excess moisture will wick out of the container naturally. Grow bags are also temperature controlled as they shed excess heat through the breathable fabric in the spring and allow soil in the bag to warm up quicker. So if you have space in your yard to build a raised bed, there are many low budget options to build these from affordable or upcycled materials. Raised garden beds provide many benefits, such as allowing you to control the content and structure of the soil. They also promote effective water drainage, provide protection from wildlife, extend planting seasons, and create more ergonomic, accessible gardening spaces. Some tips for gardening in raised beds are to not make them wider than 4 feet so that you can reach in 2 feet from either side of the garden bed. If you're putting the bed up against a fence, only make it 2 to 3 feet wide for the same reason. Choose a location of your raised bed that gets at least 6 hours of direct sunlight daily, preferably more. If the site is not level, it will need to be leveled before building your raised bed. Ideally, the site will not be shaded by trees or have competition from tree roots in the soil. Remove grass from under your raised bed area before adding soil to the bed. Drainage in a raised bed is superior from under your raised bed area before adding soil to the bed. Sorry, I messed that up. So yeah, okay. So ideally the site will not be shaded by trees, like I said, but remove grass from under your raised bed before you add soil to the bed. And like I said, drainage in a raised bed is superior to that of an in-ground bed. A 12-inch deep bed provides ample room for most vegetable roots. Almost any type of vegetable can be grown in raised beds, though most gardeners limit their raised beds to annuals only. And the soil in raised beds warm up more quickly in the spring, so planting can be done earlier than in the ground. So start dreaming and scheming of your raised bed ideas now while it's still cold. Okay, so cinder blocks. Cinder blocks are a great cost-effective alternative to wooden raised beds. They are cheap, easy to build with movable and versatile designs. A cinder block planter is resilient against sun and water damage and provides your plants with exceptional drainage to prevent root rot, pests, and fungal diseases. When planting a cinder block garden, you must consider the source of the blocks. Production of cinder blocks has decreased in the past 50 years, therefore, many cinder blocks in circulation are recycled or reclaimed. Cinder blocks are all made with cement and fine aggregates such as sand or small stones. Fly ash is also often used in their manufacturing, which is a byproduct of burning coal and contains heavy metals and other hazardous waste. Labels do not give specific information on exactly what aggregate is used in the manufacturing of these blocks. There's also little research data on this topic. So if you plan to use blocks as a raised bed material that are concerned about potential risks, you can seal the blocks with a polymer paint to reduce the risk of soil contamination. You can create your cinder block garden bed by placing cinder blocks on the ground to form a rectangle. Consider pounding them down with a rubber mallet to stabilize them. Lay down some weed fabric, cardboard, or newspaper, and add your soil to both the main bed and all of the holes in the blocks. If you like to sit while you garden, leave a couple of the holes empty, and then you can start planting. You can plant your main garden in the center and then plant beneficial flowers in the holes of the cinder blocks. Consider planting flowers that are edible, will attract pollinators, or provide some level of pest control, such as marigolds, nasturtiums, or calendula. Okay, so we're going to go back to the basics. Wood is another great choice for a raised bed building material. Many prefab wooden raised bed kits can be expensive, but you can build your own easily. When choosing wood to build your raised bed, consider what types of lumber would be best to use for your project. Untreated wood, such as pine, is the cheapest but will rot after a few years, as will many untreated woods. Hemlock will last a bit longer, Rot-resistant woods like cedar, redwood, or locust will last much longer, but they're pretty expensive. Cedar is really the top choice for raised beds because it's both rot-resistant and durable. It can last between 10 to 15 years. Cedar is also insect resistant because of the oils in its wood. Modern treated wood has chemicals to prevent rotting. Unlike the past, however, studies have shown that any compounds that leach out from the wood are well within safe levels established by the EPA. Some gardeners still feel uncomfortable with using treated wood. So one option for those concerned about chemical leaching is to line the inside of your garden bed walls with polyethylene. Railroad ties are also another easy and cheap option for building raised wooden garden beds. Old railroad ties treated with the chemical creosote do not appear to pose any health problems because creosote leaches away over time. So by the time that you're getting these railroad ties, it's more than likely that this chemical will have leached away. Pallets are also a cheap source of wooden garden bed materials as long as you know where they came from. You have to avoid pallets that are treated with a chemical called methyl bromide, which is a known endocrine disruptive chemical that can impact your reproductive health. Most pallets that are produced now, they don't use this chemical methyl bromide, I think about since 2005. But there are so many like older pallets out there. So if you're upcycling a pallet, look for a stamp on the pallet that says HT or heat treated. And if there's no stamp and you can't verify an HT on the surface, don't use a pallet in your garden. We'll be discussing more options for building upcycled pallet raised garden beds at our upcoming Upcycling for Urban Gardens workshop. And a large wooden raised bed, such as the one pictured in this slide, can be built for under $30 using 12 pine boards, which are 2 inches by 3 inches by 8 feet long. And with about 50 3-inch screws and scrap wood for support. So I'll be sending out a step-by-step guide on how to build this. Okay. So one of your biggest costs as an urban gardener is going to be your soil. If you're planting in ground in a small urban backyard, you should consider getting your soil tested. And just before you're planting edible crops, as a lot of Baltimore City soil is contaminated by lead and other heavy metals, unfortunately. Soil tests cost between $11 to $30 plus mailing costs. The University of Delaware soil testing program is one of the best regional locations to send soil samples for testing under $20. When obtaining soil for raised beds or container gardens, it's not always, it is always more affordable to buy in bulk. Utilize hugelkultur methods or to create your own compost, which we'll talk about now. So on this slide are a few great local suppliers of bulk soil. There's Holland's Organic, Veterans Compost, and Leaf Grow. Holland's Organic sells bulk and bagged soil and compost for reasonable prices. Veterans Compost sells a number of specialty mixes of soils, including some especially formulated for raised beds or starting seeds. Leaf Grow is a soil amendment used extensively in gardens as a source of humus for soil improvement. Yard trimmings such as leaves and grass clippings are diverted from landfills and instead brought to a composting facility where the material is composted to create this soil amendment. Leaf Grow can be purchased from most local gardening centers in Maryland. Veterans Compost and Holland's Organic both offer pickup and delivery services for their soil and compost. If you are surrounded by a community of other gardeners, it's definitely more economical to go in together and buy soil from any of these suppliers in bulk. Hugelkultur, my personal favorite method. So Hugelkultur is a German word that means culture or hill culture. It means mound culture, mound culture or hill culture. A hugelkultur is a sloped and raised planting bed filled with topsoil, wood, and organic materials. A well-built hugelkultur is a self-watering, self-composting raised bed with few irrigation and fertilization needs. This garden bed is designed to capture rainwater runoff for sustainable stormwater management and can serve as a windbreak. Hugelkultur utilizes a lasagna gardening or sheet composting process, meaning one layer of material is stacked on top of another, alternating carbon and nitrogen sources of organic material that will decompose over time. The materials needed to build a hugelkultur are tree logs, branches, leaves, manure, kitchen waste, grass clippings, and topsoil. Benefits of hugelkulturs are that they conserve water, are low maintenance, improve the soil, and are easy as well as affordable to build. So composting your food scraps is a great way to create your own fertilizer for your garden. Composting is a natural process of giving organic matter like fruit and vegetable scraps back to the earth. This organic matter is decomposed by microbes to form humus. Humus is a sort of fertilizer that enriches the soil and helps plants grow better. Composting reduces waste in our landfills and associated methane emissions. It also improves soil health, lessens erosion, and conserves water. There are a number of different options for indoor and outdoor composting that can be practiced in the city. To start composting, you need to collect compostable materials and have somewhere where this alchemical process of composting can happen. Collect your food scraps using a container of some sort that can be kept in your kitchen for easy access to throw scraps into. I use a 5-gallon bucket with a lid. And if you're planning to compost at your house, you should also collect leaves and other plant material to add in. Two great options for outdoor composting in an urban setting are compost tumblers or bins. A compost tumbler is a fully sealed container that can be rotated to mix composting materials. The sealed container also helps to contain the heat generated by the composting process, thereby speeding the process of converting kitchen and yard waste into compost. Tumbling composters are not the same as compost bins. Compost bins are designed to be set on the ground, and most bins have an open bottom. Compost tumblers can be set up on a porch or on a small patio, while compost bins are the least expensive kind of composter. They have several disadvantages. It's difficult to get a pitchfork inside to turn the compost. Heat is easily dissipated, which slows the composting process, and rodents can easily burrow under the sides to gain access to the composting materials. Under ideal conditions, you can convert waste to finished home compost in as little as 3 weeks in a sealed compost tumbler. Outdoor temperature, time of year, and correct balance of carbon and nitrogen matter are factors that influence the speed of composting. Though compost tumblers can be expensive to buy, you can build one yourself using a 50-gallon drum and 2x4s. Specific directions on how to create this DIY compost tumbler will be sent out following this workshop. Baltimore City's Grow Center, which stands for Green Resources and Outreach for Watersheds, is a program of the Baltimore City Department of Public Works that functions as a resource hub and connector with the goal of building community capacity to implement greening, stormwater management, waste reduction, and beautification projects. Through neighborhood pop-ups and community-based workshops, the Grow Centers increase access to needed sources of free materials and technical expertise, including mulch, trees, and seeds, as well as educational workshops on topics such as composting, planting trees, organizing neighborhood projects, community cleanups, and gardening. Throughout the spring and fall, Grow Centers host a number of in-person hands-on composting workshops in which they often give away free on-the-ground compost bins to participants. The Baltimore County government also sells compost bins, as the one pictured on the slide, for about $55 on their website. These compost bins, known as a free garden earth compost bin, are rodent resistant and are designed to be easy to harvest, like harvesting the compost, and can be seamlessly moved around and transported. So trench composting, or also known as trenching, is a way of composting by burying food scraps directly in the garden. This method of composting is effective for materials that attract rodents, such as meat, dairy, breads, and cooked foods. By burying compost in a trench, you can avoid rodent problems, since rodents should not be able to access the material if it's covered by at least 12 to 18 inches of soil. It is also a safe way to compost pet waste because the waste is buried in the ground and the risk of pathogen spread is very unlikely. However, you should not trench your pet waste within 10 feet of edible crops or your neighbor's yard. Trenching is a great way of depositing nutrients into your soil at the exact place where the plants need fertilization at their roots. Trenching is an excellent method to use in combination with growing annual plants, especially heavy feeding plants like cabbage, corn, and squash. It also encourages the development of deep water conserving root systems. Trenching creates an underground band of nutrient-rich humus for your plants. This is a slower composting process than that which occurs in a well-managed backyard bin, but the trenched materials will retain more nitrogen during their process of decomposition. To create a compost trench, dig a hole or trench in your garden 18 to 24 inches deep and as wide and as long as is practicable. Usually a shovel's width is fine. Pile the soil up beside your trench. Fill the bottom 6 inches of your trench with nutrient-rich food waste and organic materials. Make sure the materials are quite moist before you bury them. Fill in the hole with the excavated soil, making sure that there's at least 12 to 18 inches of soil on top of them. Yeah, this method is really cool. It's used all over the world. I've seen it in Asia. I've seen it in Europe. It's really helpful. So if you don't have space to compost outdoors, there are a few options for affordable indoor composting methods. Vermicompost or worm composting produces a rich organic soil amendment containing a diversity of plant nutrients and beneficial microorganisms. Vermicomposting is the product of earthworm digestion and aerobic decomposition using the activities of micro and macroorganisms at room temperature. Your home vermicomposting system will consist of a suitable container, moist bedding, redworms, and food scraps. Over a period of months, the food scraps and bedding will be digested by the redworms. The end product, vermicompost, contains worm castings, decomposed bedding, and lots of worms, as well as tiny organisms, both dead and alive. It is dark, crumbly, and safe to handle, and makes an excellent soil conditioner and rich source of plant nutrients. Redworms, known as red wrigglers or manure worms, are surface feeders of dead plants and animals, commonly found in moist leaf litter and manure piles. They are well suited to vermicomposting because they thrive in confinement and will tolerate a wide range of conditions. You'll need a minimum of 1 pound of redworms for your small bin, which is about 500 to 1,000 worms. The redworms are 2 to 4 inches in length and capable of consuming their own weight each day in raw organic materials. 1 pound of worms will consume approximately 1 pound of raw materials each day. Measure the average amount of food waste your family generates per day, then estimate the number of worms you'll need. Plastic storage bins with lids are highly recommended for indoor vermicomposting use. They're inexpensive, durable, and lightweight. A 2.2 square inch bin can handle 2 to 3 pounds of kitchen scraps each week. Avoid deep containers over 15 inches as they are heavy to move and the bedding becomes compacted, making it difficult for the redworms to forage for food. Bedding provides your redworms with the cool, moist environment they need to thrive. Your redworms will tunnel through and digest the bedding along with food scraps to produce vermicompost. Hand-shredded newspaper, color pages included, or corrugated cardboard ripped into thin strips make convenient bedding materials. Redworms require a steady supply of food scraps to grow and multiply. Feed your worms 2 to 3 times each week by burying appropriate food scraps under the bedding in different locations. The smaller the food scraps, the quicker they will be digested by your redworms. Some foods you should avoid feeding your worms are meat, fats, bones, grease, oil, dairy products, pet waste, plastic wrap or tin foil, and of course, chemicals, glass, and metal. Worms can't digest these and they will be harmful to them. So foods that are okay to feed to your worms are, any type of vegetable, fruit, herb, tea bags and leaves, coffee filters and grounds. Those are all good. And also just like plant material from your garden can be used to feed them. And try not to add large amounts of raw onions, garlic, citrus peels, eggshells, cereals, or bread. Okay. And so bokashi is another great indoor composting method. Bokashi is a Japanese word meaning fermented organic matter, developed in the early 1980s by Dr. Teruhiga, a Japanese professor. The bokashi method involves layering kitchen scraps such as vegetables and fruits, as well as meat and dairy scraps, with a bokashi inoculant in a special bucket. Usually the inoculant consists of either wheat germ, wheat bran, or sawdust combined with molasses and effective microorganisms known as EM. The bran or molasses serves as the food for the microorganisms, which are the same natural microorganisms found in the soil. Bokashi bucket food waste is sealed in a bucket to ferment. Then the fermented waste needs to be mixed into a large tub of soil indoors, stirred into a compost pile, or buried in garden soil outdoors to finish decomposing. You can make an inexpensive bokashi container at home using a 5-gallon bucket. To create a bokashi compost, you need to chop food waste into 2 to 1 inch pieces. If you add larger pieces, they will take longer to ferment. About once a day or every 2 days, add a small sprinkle of bokashi bran, about 1 tablespoon per inch of food waste. Open the bin only to add scraps, not to check on the state of your fermentation. If you're adding lots of fluffy scraps, press them down to remove air. You can also place a plate or another flat, heavy object on top of the materials to weigh it down and limit oxygen exposure. Once the bin is full, keep it closed and let it sit in a warm place for 2 weeks. During that time, drain the liquid, which is known as bokashi tea, from your container every few days. The pros of bokashi composting are that it lets you recycle dairy and meat scraps that are not incorporated in other forms of composting. Bokashi composting requires a relatively small space, and the resulting product makes for a highly nutritious pre-compost. The cons of bokashi compost are that it requires a greater investment of time and effort than other composting methods, and both the bokashi tea and the pre-compost are highly acidic. So there are many other low-cost fertilization methods for your garden that can be created from supplies found around your kitchen and house. Before applying any of the fertilization techniques I'll be describing in non-container gardening spaces, it's important to test your soil fertility to see what kind of soil type you have, as well as what you may need to add to your soil to make it more healthy and balanced. This can either be done with a testing kit that can be purchased from most local gardening supply stores or through at-home methods, which I'll be sending detailed information about following this workshop. If you have an aquarium at home, dirty fish tank water can be used to fertilize your garden. Fish tank water is rich in beneficial bacteria, as well as potassium, phosphorus, nitrogen, and trace nutrients that will promote lush and healthy plants. These are some of the same nutrients you'll find in many commercial fertilizers. Save your fish tank water for ornamental plants, though, as it may not be the healthiest thing for your plants, for plants you intend to eat, especially if the tank has been chemically treated to kill algae or to adjust pH levels in the water. If you've recently treated your fish tank for diseases, we recommend not using fish tank water on your plants. So water used for cooking can also be used to fertilize your garden. When you boil foods, some of their nutrients leach into the water. Nutrient-rich foods like rice, vegetables, pasta, and eggs can leave nitrogen, potassium, calcium, magnesium, and other essential nutrients in your cooking water. Using this water to feed the plants in your garden is a 2-for-1. The plants get the hydration they need, plus some nourishment, and it gives use to water that would otherwise be wasted. Fertilizing your garden with Epsom salts is another great way to give your plants a boost of magnesium, which is an essential nutrient that helps with photosynthesis and the overall health of your plants. There are a few different ways you can fertilize your garden with Epsom salts. You can apply the salts directly by taking a teaspoon of Epsom salt and placing it into your plant's soil. If you choose to use this method, then you should aim for 1 teaspoon of salt per foot of garden bed size approximately once every month. Alternatively, you can take another teaspoon and mix it in a cup of water before lightly spraying it on leaves. Epsom salts can also boost the magnesium level in your compost to promote sustainable plant growth and prevent nutrient deficiencies for healthy plants throughout the summer. So there are many more effective fertilizers that can be made from products you have lying around your kitchen. Unsulfured blackstrap molasses provides the micronutrients that soil microbes crave, such as calcium, magnesium, iron, and potassium, which help enzymes function and to maintain protein structures in soil microorganisms. Not only does molasses have great benefits for healthy plants and increased plant fertility, but it also promotes insect and disease control. The addition of molasses in your garden can help deter soft-bodied pests like aphids, ants, and root knot nematodes, as well as bad fungi. Unsulfured molasses is more often a cheaper option than man-made chemical fertilizers. There are various methods of mixing unsulfured molasses water for application. For every 1,000 square feet, use 1/2 cup of liquid molasses. When applying to individual plants, mix 2 tablespoons of molasses per gallon of water. Apply around every 2 weeks. More frequent applications is unnecessary and can potentially throw off the pH balance of your soil. Milk can also serve as a fertilizer for your garden to help plant grow. Milk has antifungal and pesticidal attributes. The same properties that make milk good for humans, such as calcium and B vitamins, are also beneficial to plants. Calcium helps plants grow, as well as to prevent blossom and rot, which can be caused by a calcium deficiency. This condition is common in tomatoes, peppers, and squash plants. Milk's antifungal properties are well researched within the scientific community, with successful outcomes in treating powdery mildew, which is a fungal condition that impacts many economically important crops such as grapes. However, milk isn't a panacea when it comes to growing plants. Using too much can result in a destroyed plant thanks to the bacteria in the beverage that can stunt growth and cause wilt. The fat in whole milk can also cause a foul odor, while skim milk could lead to black rot or soft rot. Any type of milk, including fresh, expired, evaporated, and powdered milk, can be used in the garden as long as it's properly diluted. When using milk for your garden, stick with reduced fat 2% or low-fat milk rather than whole or skim milk options if possible. Mix the milk with water in a 50 to 50% ratio and pour into a spray bottle. Apply the milk mixture to the leaves of your plants, checking back in about 30 minutes to ensure that the watery milk was absorbed. You can also pour your milk mixture directly into the soil at the base of your plant, which allows its roots to absorb it directly. Coffee grounds are great for both fertilizing plants or adding to compost piles. The benefit of using coffee grounds as a fertilizer is that it adds organic material to the soil, which improves soil drainage, soil retention, and aeration. The used coffee grounds will also help to feed microorganisms that are beneficial to plant growth and will also attract earthworms. Many people feel that coffee grounds will lower the pH or raise the acidic level of soil, which is great for acid-loving plants. But this is only true for unwashed coffee grounds. Fresh coffee grounds are acidic. Used coffee grounds are neutral. If you rinse your used coffee grounds, they will have a near neutral pH of 6.5 and will not affect the acid levels of your soil. To use coffee grounds as fertilizer, work the coffee grounds into the soil around your plant. Leftover diluted coffee works well like this too. Another little trick is green tea. Both the liquid and the leaves of green tea are a wonderful garden fertilizer. This is widely used across Asia. When you add green tea leaves to your garden, they give your plants a boost of nitrogen and become food for local earthworms. You can splatter a thin layer of green tea leaves around the base of your plants, focusing primarily on acid-friendly plants, such as roses, tomatoes, or blueberries. These types of plants thrive in acidic soil, which the green tea leaves will provide. As long as you use the green tea leaves sparingly, it will only add a small amount of acidity to your garden and will benefit all kinds of plant varieties. You can also make a homemade superfood green tea for your plants by soaking used green tea bags in your watering can for a week or so, or until the water starts to change colors. You can use this green tea concoction to water your outdoor garden with, and this mixture is also good for indoor plants, so give it a little try. So some other interesting and effective kitchen scrap fertilizers can be made from eggshells, gelatin, and banana peels. The shell of the chicken egg is comprised of about 96% calcium carbonate. Calcium is an essential plant nutrient that moderates soil acidity. Fast-growing plants deplete the soil of calcium very quickly, so eggshells are an ideal supplement and feed for outdoor flowers, vegetables, and fruit trees in your garden. During the winter months, crush eggshells by using a mortar and pestle and sprinkle them over your container or garden bed where you plan to plant come springtime. Alternatively, you can add crumbled eggshells directly into the bottom of your in-ground planting holes. It is beneficial to use eggshells when growing tomatoes, peppers, and eggplants or ornamental plants such as roses, hydrangeas, spider plants, and ferns. Another way to add homemade eggshell fertilizer to your plants is through creating a calcium solution. You can do this by finely crushing eggshells and adding them directly into your watering can, then letting them sit for about a day and then watering your plants with the solution. The calcium from the eggshells will be more easily absorbed by the plant's root system using this method. So, more unusual fertilization method, unflavored gelatin has served as a natural organic fertilizer for many gardeners for years, mainly due to its high nitrogen content. With nitrogen being one of the primary essential nutrients for plants, gelatin is a great way to assist your plants in meeting this vital requirement. One of the qualities that make gelatin so beneficial to gardeners is its time-release nature. Once the garden is treated with gelatin, the plants can store any nitrogen that is not currently needed until the need arises. This quality works well for new gardeners since it reduces the likelihood of irreversible damage to the plant by over-fertilization. Making gelatin plant fertilizer is not difficult, and it can be completed in less than 5 minutes. So it requires a quart of water, a measuring cup, as well as a 1-quart container and an envelope of unflavored gelatin powder. Begin by measuring 1/4 cup of water into 1-quart container. Next, empty the contents of the gelatin packet into the container and stir to make sure the powder is fully dissolved. Allow the mixture to settle for 1 to 2 minutes before adding another cup of water to the mix. Once the mixture is clear, it will be safe and you can add the rest of the water to the container. After the rest of the water is added, your gelatin fertilizer will be ready to use, and this process should be repeated monthly to keep your plants healthy and strong. Banana peels are another great natural fertilizer you can use in the garden. These slippery coverings are loaded with nutrients such as potassium, phosphorus, as well as calcium. When they are used as a fertilizer, they can help to improve plant strength, build stronger stems, encourage robust root development, and encourage larger flushes of fruits and vegetables. While you can toss your banana peels directly into your garden, like in trench composting, you can also make a banana peel tea, which is a much more effective method of delivering those needed nutrients to your plants. You can make banana peel tea by soaking your banana peels in water for a week. When you water your garden with this liquid, it will enrich your flower and vegetable beds by giving your plants a healthy nutrient boost. You can then dry the skins, grind them up, and mix them in your soil to use as another method of fertilization. So now we'll talk about some fertilizers made from yard waste that you might find around your yard or maybe even your neighborhood. Grass clippings are a great option to add to your garden bed as a top dressing. They help your bed to retain moisture, suppress weeds, reduce soil compaction, and add nutrients for your plants. You can reap the benefits of this organic material by simply spreading a few inches of grass clippings over the surface of your bed. Leaves are another natural and accessible fertilizer for your garden. You can simply collect leaves in the late fall and work them directly into your garden bed to improve aeration, drainage, and water capacity. Mix several inches of leaves into the soil as deep as you want to go, and then allow them to decompose before spring planting. Using unwanted weeds in your garden to make a weed fertilizer tea is a really easy, effective, and affordable way to add nutrients and minerals to your garden. You can do this by simply adding weeds and water to a large bucket, covering it, and letting it sit for about a month, stirring weekly. So to do this, you use about 8 cups of water per pound of weeds. After the tea is made, use a sieve or cheesecloth to strain out the plant materials. That will catch the seeds, which you can throw out. And it will leave you with a rich, nutrient-filled liquid fertilizer. Any weeds can go into the tea, but for extra caution, avoid things that are toxic, such as poison ivy or poison oak, especially for use on vegetables. Dandelions work really well as they store a lot of nutrients in their roots. And keep in mind that your weed tea will smell strong, and to some people, it might smell unpleasant. So take care to avoid getting it on your hands or clothing, as it will also stain. Once you have a batch of weed tea ready, dilute to about 1 part of tea to 10 parts water. Use this mixture as a direct fertilizer simply by adding it to the soil at the base of each plant. Any plant, including vegetables, can benefit from this method. So now we're going to move on to some of the more interesting low-cost fertilizers you may or may not feel inclined to use in your garden. So human urine has been used as a garden fertilizer for thousands of years, but it fell out of favor in the age of modern sewage systems and chemical fertilizers. Urine contains important nutrients for plant growth, including carbon, phosphorus, potassium, and nitrogen, and when handled properly, it makes a great plant food. Plus, it's free. And in a time when commercially produced plant foods cost more every day, this is a big plus. When using human urine in your garden, it's important to implement safe peeing practices. When urine is set to age in plastic jugs for 6 months or more, it becomes increasingly inhospitable to a wide range of microbes. 6 months at room temperature is the current aging recommendation from the World Health Organization for agricultural use. Whether fresh or time stabilized for 6 months or more, urine must be diluted because of its potent supply of salts and nutrients. Salts in urine are the reason why grass dies when dogs pee on it repeatedly. Nitrogen-hungry crops like sweet corn respond well to 3 cups of water to 1 cup of urine mixtures. A 5 cups water to 1 cup urine dilution is good for broccoli, peppers, tomatoes, and other vegetables that benefit from booster feeding, as well as container-grown flowers. Once diluted, the mixture is applied directly to the root zone of actively growing plants and then diluted to distribute the nutrients into the soil. Don't worry about any odor present at the time of application, as this will dissipate within a few minutes. And you'll have come 1 step closer to growing a great garden with fewer outside inputs. Urban gardening on a budget. Peeing on your garden, it's the best way to keep on your budget. So human and pet hair can also be useful in the garden. These will break down and release nutrients into the soil, albeit slowly. Because every strand of hair contains up to 14 different elements, including gold, it can supply trace minerals to your plants. Hair breaks down slowly, so it can take up to 2 years to decompose. So you can think of this as a long-term fertilizer. Of course, hair is not a complete fertilizer, so it might be better as just one of the ingredients in your compost pile. Probably the best way to use hair is as mulch. Because of its structure, hair lets water into the soil at the same time as it blocks evaporation, keeping the soil moisture balanced. Like all mulches, hair also keeps the soil cool. Hair mulch is very effective at controlling weeds, which cannot penetrate the mulch. Human hair is often effective in discouraging deer because hair breaks down slowly over several years. By simply digging hair into the soil, you can improve soil structure and form tiny air pockets that allow roots to grow in hard or compacted soils. Hair that is treated with dyes or other chemicals is best used on ornamentals, such as flowers and shrubs, rather than on food crops. Um, Besides your own hair clippings, you can often obtain free bags of hair from barbershops and pet groomers. So using wood ash in home gardens can increase soil fertility and raise soil pH. Wood ash contains nutrients that can be beneficial for plant growth. Calcium is the plant nutrient most commonly found in wood ash and may comprise 20% or more of its contents. Potassium is another common component of wood ash, occurring at concentrations of up to 5%. Magnesium, phosphorus, and sulfur are also typically found in wood ash concentrations of up to 2%. Finally, wood ash can contain trace minerals or trace amounts of iron, aluminum, magnesium, or magnesium, zinc, boron, and other nutrients needed by plants. If you decide that using wood ash is appropriate in your food garden, only use wood that has come from trees grown in natural areas. Prior to use, sift wood ash to remove large charcoal pieces as well as any active embers. Apply only the amount of wood ash recommended based on a soil fertility test and based on the nutrient needs of the plants that you intend to grow in the treated area. Applying excessive amounts can lead to nutrient toxicity and/or nutrient deficiency issues in plants. Applications of wood ash are generally limited to a maximum of 15 to 20 pounds, or approximately a 5-gallon pail per 1,000 square feet per year. Spread wood ash evenly over the area to be treated, such as a vegetable garden, established perennial flower bed, lawn, or other landscape area during the winter. Because wood ash particles are very fine and can easily be blown around by the wind, avoid making applications when it's very windy. Whenever possible, apply wood ash to moist soil, and where feasible, work the ash into the soil using a rototiller, spade, or rake in the early spring. So now we'll move on to homemade herbicides. An herbicide is any substance used to kill unwanted plants. While most herbicides are made with synthetic chemicals, natural agents can be used to great effect. Many common weeds can be either food, medicine, or unwanted visitors to the garden, depending on the varieties and how you view them. But if you've eaten all of the edible weeds that you can, and you still need to get rid of some stubborn plants in your yard, it's far better for you, the soil, and your local waterway to choose a more environmentally friendly herbicide than those commonly found in your home and garden center. Drenching weeds with boiling water is by far the simplest to prepare and is the least harmful to both humans and the environment. Simply bring a big pot of water to boil on your stove, then pour it over the leaves and stems of the weeds you wish to get rid of. Using boiling water is an effective method of killing weeds in places such as sidewalks or driveway cracks, or over a larger area that you'd like to replant after the weeds are gone, as it doesn't leave any residue or have any harmful long-term effects. Spraying white vinegar on weed leaves will cause the weeds to die off, making room in your yard for more desirable plants. The white vinegar sold in grocery stores is about 5% acetic acid, which is usually strong enough for most weeds. Vinegar can be applied by spraying directly onto the leaves of the weeds, being careful to minimize any overspraying on garden plants and nearby soil. Repeated applications may be necessary, and the addition of a little liquid dish detergent may improve the effectiveness of this homemade herbicide. Borax, which is sold as a laundry and cleaning product in many grocery stores, can lend a helping hand in the yard as an effective herbicide as well. Add 10 ounces of powdered borax to 2.5 gallons of water, mix thoroughly, and use a sprayer to coat the leaves of unwanted weeds in your yard. Keep overspray off of any plants you want to keep, and avoid saturating the soil with the solution, and avoid contact with bare skin. Okay, we're going to take a 1-minute break so I can plug in my laptop. Sorry about that. For some reason, when I give a presentation, my laptop dies so quickly, even though it was fully charged when I started. Okay. So next, we are going to move on to homemade insecticides, which are also known as pesticides. These are defined by the EPA as any chemical used to prevent, destroy, repel, or mitigate pests. And as such, they have the potential to be harmful to people, animals, or the environment. Not all insects are harmful. Applying insecticides indiscriminately, especially harsh pesticides that affect even beneficial insects, can have a detrimental effect on your local ecosystem. Some plants may be more sensitive than others to various treatments. I recommend testing for plant sensitivity before you apply any of these methods. You can do this by simply applying one of the following formulas to a small area of plants in your garden and wait 24 hours to see if any damage occurs. The best pest management plan always starts with preventative and other non-chemical methods before bringing out any chemical sprays. Since healthy, happy plants are much more resilient to pests, always begin with choosing the right plant for the right place and caring for them correctly. Companion planting is another essential strategy in pest control. It involves choosing plants that will be good neighbors to one another, improving environmental conditions, attracting beneficial creatures, and or repelling, confusing, or distracting certain pest species to keep their companions safe. A homemade insecticide made from vegetable oil mixed with a mild soap such as Dr. Bronner's can have a devastating effect on certain troublesome insects such as aphids and mites. To make a basic oil spray insecticide, mix 1 cup of vegetable oil with 1 tablespoon of soap, cover and shake thoroughly. When you're ready to apply, add 2 teaspoons of the mixture with 1 quart of water, shake thoroughly, and spray directly on the surfaces of plants, which are being affected by pests. The oil coats the bodies of the insects, effectively suffocating them and blocks the pores through which they breathe. A similar homemade pesticide to the oil spray is a soap spray, which is also effective for controlling spider mites, aphids, scale crawlers, mealybugs, whiteflies, beetles, and other hungry insects. To make a basic soap spray insecticide, mix 1 1/2 teaspoons of mild liquid soap with 1 quart of water and spray the mixture directly on the infected surface of your plants. A soap spray insecticide works in a similar fashion as a oil spray pesticide and can be applied as necessary. It is also recommended to not apply these mixtures during the hot, sunny parts of the day, but rather in the evenings or early mornings. So, common kitchen ingredients such as garlics and chilies can be used to knock down or even knock out insect infestations in your garden. To make a basic garlic spray, take 2 bulbs of garlic, puree them in a blender or food processor with a small amount of water. Let the mixture sit overnight, then strain it into a quart jar, adding 1/2 cup of vegetable oil, 1 teaspoon of mild soap liquid, and enough water to fill the jar. To use this homemade insecticide, use 1 cup of the mixture with 1 quart of water and spray liberally on infested plants. Garlic spray is most effective on repelling aphids, ants, beetles, borers, caterpillars, armyworms, slugs, and termites. Similar to garlic spray, chili pepper spray is a great homemade natural insect repellent that can be used for a variety of different plants and different pests. Chili spray can be made from either fresh hot peppers or chili pepper powder. To make a basic chili spray from pepper powder, mix 1 tablespoon of chili powder with 1 quart of water and several drops of mild soap liquid. This mixture can be used full strength on the leaves of affected plants. To make chili spray from fresh chili peppers, blend or puree 1/2 cup of peppers with 1 cup of water, then add 1 quart of water and bring to a boil. Let sit until cold and then strain out the chili material. Add several drops of liquid soap and spray as desired. Chili spray is most effective on repelling aphids, loopers, armyworms, spider mites, thrips, leaf miners, and whiteflies. So thanks for sticking with me through all of that. I know that was a lot of information. So we'll now move on to our last tips and tricks for lowering the cost of your urban garden. Seeds are another gardening expense you can avoid by utilizing resources in your local community. Every year, the Baltimore Free Farm hosts a seed swap event, which is free of cost to the public. Gardeners from around the city will bring seeds they save here to trade. Their next annual seed swap will be held in February at St. Luke's Church. You don't need to bring seeds to take seeds from this event, as there's usually an overabundance of seeds to share. Oregon Ridge Nature Center in Cockeysville, Maryland also hosts annual seed swap events. Another plug for the city's Grow Center is that they give away free garden seeds at all of their events, so make sure to check their schedule and swing by to pick up some seeds and other useful gardening supplies. If you're interested in never having to purchase seeds again, saving your own seeds from plants you grow from year to year is a great option. And if you're interested in learning step-by-step of how to save seeds, look out for our free seed swap or seed saving workshop that might include a seed swap. And we'll be offering that this coming May. So watering a raised bed can be another significant expense, especially during hot and dry weather. To save money and conserve water, try using a drip irrigation system. This type of system delivers water directly to the roots of your plants, minimizing evaporation and runoff. You can also consider using a rain barrel to collect rainwater, which can be used to water your garden during dry spells. Make sure to water your plants early in the morning or late in the evening to reduce water loss due to evaporation. By watering wisely, you'll not only save money, but also promote healthy plant growth and conserve this precious resource. Oyas are another great tool for water conservation. An oya is an ancient method of irrigating crops. It's believed that oils were first used in northern Africa as long as 4,000 years ago. There is also evidence that oyas were used in China around the same time. An oya is basically a low-fired clay vessel with a narrow neck. The pot is buried in the ground with only the neck protruding above the soil. Crops are then planted around the perimeter of the oya at a distance based on the size of the oya and the types of plants being grown. The oya is then filled with water and a cover is placed on the top to prevent soil and other debris from entering the oya and minimize evaporation of the water from the jar. Ideally, the gardener should only have to refill the oya with water anywhere from once a day to once a week. Oyas should be refilled when the water reaches the 50% mark. As the soil becomes moist, the plants surrounding the oya will reach toward the water source. Oyas work through the process of osmosis. Osmosis in biology is the movement of water molecules through a membrane from a high concentration of water molecules to a low concentration of water molecules. Think of the oya vessel, which is comprised of porous clay as a membrane. The water in the oya is a high concentration of water molecules. The surrounding soil around the oya has a low concentration of water molecules. The process of osmosis wants the water molecules to be equal on both sides of the membrane and will move the water from the high concentration inside the jar to the low concentration in the soil. Osmosis theoretically will continue until the concentration is equal on both sides. The beauty of this system is that if it rains, the amount of water molecules in the soil side of the jar is higher, so osmosis will slow or even stop until the soil starts to dry out, and then osmosis will begin again. This means it is impossible to overwater or waste water using oyas. Oyas can be cheaply made at home. You can start by purchasing large clay pots with a loose drainage saucer. You can find these even at the dollar store. So first, set the saucer aside and use a cork or other plug to seal the hole at the bottom of your clay pot. Then dig a hole in your garden large enough to fit the pot up to the brim. From there, insert the pot and fill in the dirt around the pot, being careful not to allow the dirt into the pot. Add water to the pot and use the saucer as a lid on the top of the pot to prevent the water from evaporating. Plant your seeds or starter plants close to your new oya and just refill it as need be. So oyas can be used for raised beds or in-ground beds. More detailed visual directions will be sent out following this workshop. So there's truly an endless amount of ways to create an abundant garden in the city on a budget. I hope the methods I went over in this presentation are helpful in your gardening journey. And on this slide, you can see the logos of some really great organizations and programs that offer assistance and educational resources to urban gardeners in Baltimore City. Thank you so much for coming and for listening to this presentation, and have a wonderful rest of your day.